Hello, hello, happy Friday, Sretan Patak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, answer 5 questions about Croatia from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, expatinCroatia.com, email, our consulting sessions, and people who shout them from the fifth floor. So I am on island Kaprije this week, and I'm actually going to move locations because the apartment where my friend and I are staying has a roof terrace, but there is very little shade here. So I'm kind of hovering in a corner, just waiting for 5 o'clock to tick over so that I can show you the view from the roof terrace. And then I'm going to take you down to the ground floor terrace, super fancy, to do the rest of the show today. So thank you so much for being here. So let me go ahead and show you. So just a little bit of context first. So Kaprije is an island that you get to from Šibenik. So we took a ferry, a direct ferry, no stops, an hour and 5 minutes from Šibenik to get here. It's very tiny. It has about 160 year-round residents here. And it's a little oddly shaped to me. It kind of looks like a fidget spinner, if I had to think about it. Like it has these kind of bulbs that kind of shoot off in different directions. And then the center is pretty narrow. So where we are, when you're up here on the roof terrace, you can actually see the sea on two sides of the island, which is pretty neat. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. And also there's all these like really beautiful like little stone houses, and they're all pretty clustered together. So here in the evening, when we're sitting out here on the terrace, we can hear like the life that is happening in all of these different homes. And it's a really nice experience. So let me go ahead and show you what Kaprije looks like from my perspective, and then we're going to go downstairs. Okay. Um, so here is one side of the island, and this is the channel where we came in on the ferry, and then down there, this row of houses, that's where the Riva, I guess, would be down there where restaurants and cafes are. And then over here, this is the other side of the island. That's where we went today. So they're off in the distance, which is probably going to be a little hard for you to see in this context, but that is where Šibenik is. And it was pretty crazy. A couple of nights ago, we were out here. It was the first night we got here. I guess it was Wednesday night. And we were looking off in the distance of Šibenik, and we saw the wildfires. And it was really startling because I'd read the news earlier that day that they had already had their toughest day. It was under control. And then, I don't know, 11 p.m. at night, we see these two giant fireballs on the horizon towards Šibenik. But we could see it all the way from here. And there are several smaller islands that are in between Kaprije and Šibenik. So that was distressing, to say the least. But there hasn't been any smoke today, and there was quite a bit of smoke the first day that we got here, so it seems to have subsided, which is really good. Bravo to the firefighters that have been working tirelessly to put those out. And this isn't the only one. There are some all over the place right now. It's really tough time, but I get it. It's friggin' boiling, which is why I cannot do this episode up here. It's super, super mega hot. So anyways, this is our lovely home for the week, which we're really enjoying. And so I'm going to take you down through this stone house, which is adorned with all kinds of Croatian lace, which is giving me serious like baka baby lasagna vibes. So let me kind of give you a little tour. So this is all over the house. You can see. So this is the top floor. This is just kind of extra. More lace, more lace. Fishnets. So I'm going to take you downstairs now. All right. And I'm going to try and do this and not fall or hit my head on the low ceiling. Say hi, Jason. Well, I kind of love this, actually. I think this is really pretty cool. I'm also a big reader. More lace. And see? Me in the mirror. All right, we're going to go back downstairs now. All the way down, all the way down. Oh! Oh. If you've ever met me in person, you probably have surmised that I am a terrible klutz. This is downstairs area, more lace. Okay, now we're going to go outside and pop over to the outdoor terrace. I have left the frozen comfort. And now I'm back out in the heat. So there's this cool terrace here that we're able to use. Rosemary. We've got a grill, lovely plants, nice place to spread out. So we had breakfast out here today. Over here, hang on. So it's going to be kind of the direction of the sun, but nevertheless, I think we get the gist. So this is more of the village here, and then the water off in the horizon. And Russell. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. So glad to have you. I'm just going to get you settled here so we're all comfortable and can chill out now. Yeah? Am I kind of even? Yeah, I think so. All right, perfect. Hello. Okay, I have so much to tell you today. Like I've said the last few episodes, there's just been so much going on. I have lots of stories for you. So I'm here with my friend Jason. Jason lives in Ljubljana. Him and I have known each other for 15 years. So he drove down to Šibenik. I drove up from Split, and we came out here to have a little island holiday. So when we got here, so Kaprije is one of 7 islands that doesn't have cars. If you remember, in May, I was on the island of Susak, more in the north in Kvarner, and they also do not have cars. So this is a little bit of a bigger, more populated island, so a little bit busier, but still they don't have cars. I mean, we saw like 1 or 2, but you could tell that there was like a purpose behind it. They had some kind of permissions. So the people who run this apartment, they asked us if we wanted a ride with our luggage. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So what that is we got into this little thing called a Volta, which I'd never heard of before, but it kind of looks like a very, very small mini go-kart version, not go-kart, a golf cart version of a truck. So we got in the back of that and we rode up the hill like 2 minutes, and that was super fun. I really enjoyed that a lot. Um, what else? What else? What else? Oh yeah. So in the mornings, I've been going for coffee, obviously, and just people watching. The people watching here is so wonderful, and I think it's because part of the reason I love people watching in general. I think it's really enjoyable to see other people in the world. Maybe you're never ever going to actually have an interaction with them, but just to kind of see what's going on, see how people are going about their lives, I just find very fascinating. And because this is such a small island, it's very easy to pick out the locals, the characters. For example, there's the Port Authority guy, which really reminds me of the Port Authority guy from Island Susak. So, like there's one guy who like seems to run the port, and he rides around on a bicycle all day. And this one here, he has a Croatian flag on the back of his bike, and it was just so darling to kind of just watch him zigzag around the Riva and the port and say hi to people and have coffee and do all these things. That's really nice. And then something that's a bit unique. So in the bay where the port is and the Riva, there's all these little like jetties, like a ton of jetties. And then in between the jetties, it's maybe not like the space is probably 4 meters at most, 4 or 5 meters totally at most. So it's in these little kind of like inlets between these jetties is where all the locals are swimming. So you just kind of see these collections of heads just bobbing up and down around these jetties, which is really fun. Ooh. Other thing is I saw a sign. All right. When we came and we met the people who run this place, it's a Croatian Slovenian couple. And I was chatting with the Slovenian woman on Croatian. And so she was kind of giving me these tips. And she said, go to this cafe bar because they're the ones who play Croatian music. And I was like, because one thing I don't like about summer in Croatia is that all of the cafe bars, they just start playing like like EDM and loudly. And I'm not saying that I'm like against EDM. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But like part of Croatian cafe culture, the best part of it is that you're sitting there having a conversation. And that's really hard when EDM is blasting. And also, there's just been a trend away from playing Croatian music in bars and in the more populated, like touristy areas. And that stinks because I don't know, if I'm a tourist, I want to come here and I want to hear Croatian music. I want to hear what it's like to be a local here. I don't want to hear the same music that I heard from where I'm coming from, you know? Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm alone in that. I'd love to hear what you think about it. But yeah, they've been playing exclusively Croatian music, and yesterday they were playing All Oliver, which I thought was awesome. I don't know if that is coincidental or if it's in honor of Oliver, the anniversary of his death. I think the sixth anniversary because it was 2019. Oliver died on July 29th, 2018. And so I've noticed that I've heard a lot more Oliver around me because of that. Again, maybe it's just coincidental, but I really enjoyed that. And they have a sandwich board outside that says that there's going to be a tamburashi performance on Saturday night. So I was like, Jason, I'm going to this. You don't have to join me. I'm going to this. I really, really want to see this. So I'm super jazzed that there's going to be a tamburashi performance on Saturday. And I took a picture and I sent it to Cam, and I was like, Cam. So yeah, so that tomorrow, that's what we're gonna do. So, what else do I want to tell you? You know what? I have a bit of a story. I have a little story. I have a little story. I'd love to hear if you think I'm nuts or not. And if you think I'm nuts, great. I'm okay with that. You can laugh at me because I had some friends that laughed at me. When we saw the wildfire from here, I got really unsettled about it. And I didn't know what to do. I just found myself just kind of like spinning in place because I was like, do I call someone? I mean, I'm sure they know about it. I know they're handling it, but like this like civic duty in me was like, do I need to do something? Like we have colleagues in Shubenik. I don't know what to do. So I spoke to my business partner. I was like, should I be doing something? She's like, Sarah, if you really want to do something, you can call the fire brigade. You can tell them that you can see the fires from Kaprije. And so that's what I did. I went to expatandcroatia.com because we have a post on emergency numbers. And so I went and found the number for the fire brigade and I called. And, you know, sometimes I feel like you hear these stories about natural disasters and they're like, such and such could be, seen as far as, Island Beast. It's like, well, how do they know it was seen from Island Beast if someone didn't call and say, I see this from Island Beast? I felt like I had to do something. And at a bare minimum, it was going to ease my anxiety if I just called and I was like, hey, I can see this from here. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to do, but there you go. So that's what I did. I called the fire brigade. And this next part in my head is a really comedic scene. So I'll do my best to share it with you in the way that I have envisioned it in my head. So when the person answered the phone, it sounded like they had been dead asleep on a couch, just like fumbling for the phone. Moim. Like And then when they picked up the phone, my natural instinct was, oh, I'm just gonna see if I can speak English. So I was like, "Možemo na engleskom?" And he said, "Samo," like mumbling out "samo malo," which means only a little. However, there are multiple interpretations of "samo malo." To me, "samo malo" meant I only speak a little English. That is not what he meant. What he meant was, wait a moment while I go get someone who does speak English. So because I interpreted as I only speak a little English, I thought for like just 2 seconds, I was like, you know what? I can say this in Croatian. So I said, ja sam na Kaprijama, vidim vatru pokraj Šibenika. And there was a long pause because no one was listening to what I was saying. The phone was set down and he was going to get somebody else. so, so after there was a long pause, someone else picked up the phone and was like, good evening, how can I help you? So no one heard my Croatian. And and then I spoke English because I lost my confidence. And so I just said the same thing in English. I'm on island Kaprije and I see very large fireballs near Šibenik. And I just felt like I needed to tell somebody. He was like, thank you, we know about it. And I was like, okay, malo puno, lako noć. So maybe I was silly, but it just felt like the right thing to do, and I stand by that. And at a bare minimum, I calmed the F down and I didn't have any anxiety anymore about it. I mean, I had a mild bit because we still do have colleagues there, and there are a lot of people who live in Šibenik, and it just seemed like I don't know, we're kind of far away, and that seemed real serious. But I just want to reiterate, we got to give all of our love to the Croatian firefighters who are out there like in this 35-degree heat fighting these fires. Holy crap. They're all up and down the coast. So far, it seems like for the most part, no one has been seriously injured, which is great. Um, but yeah, it's tough, and every summer it's getting a little bit tougher. So I really applaud those. And a lot of these like smaller areas, the firemen are completely volunteer. They're not sitting in a firehouse just waiting for a call. They're volunteering to go and do this and fight fires. So I think that's really amazing that there are people who are going to do this on a volunteer basis so that we can all be as safe as we can be and preserve our nature. So hats off to them. Okay, so now next on to the other stories I have to tell you. So I put on stories that I was going to be on HRT. I felt like I was told that it was going to be on Wednesday or Tuesday, and then it was not aired. Then it happened yesterday, so it was on last night. It's going to be re-aired tomorrow at 5:40. However, the journalist just before I got on with you sent me a link that it's actually on the HRT website on Glass Hrvatske, the video. So that's something we can share if you want it. Send us a DM, but I'm going to put it on stories as well. But it was super cool. Okay, so just a few things about it. So the reason I was on HRT is because I've been elected to the board of the Zagreb chapter of the Association for Croatian American Professionals. I'm the secretary for 2024 to 2026 term. So they wanted me to talk about like what my role is going to be as the secretary, what our objectives are, and how we're going to try and strengthen the connection between Croatian diaspora and Croatia because it's a Croatian American organization and like Croatia has one chapter, Zagreb. So basically the Zagreb chapter represents everyone who's not in the United States, pretty much. So it's a big chapter. So that's what I talked about. And so I pre-recorded it in my house and sent it to them, and then they integrated it. So I didn't really know what to expect. And so last night when I watched the segment, first they showed Maria Sentich, who is the president of ACAP, like globally. She's lovely. And then they interviewed my friend Don, who I know I've mentioned to you guys a bunch of times. Don's amazing. He's the president of ACAP Zagreb. And then it led into me. And what I was not expecting is they talked about expat in Croatia like a lot. They showed our website a few times and they showed B-roll of me in CSAC last fall. And I was like, okay, I think it's pretty cool that I've now been on HRT enough that they have B-roll in their archive of me. But it was a huge opportunity. So I really want to thank Ivana Perkovac, who was the journalist who worked with me and who asked me these questions and was gracious enough to share this and share expat in Croatia on HRT. So I'm really grateful for that, as well as Don, of course, because he's the one who presented this opportunity to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Damian's here. Hello, darling. So nice to see you. Okay, so if you want to watch it live, again, it's HRT4 tomorrow at 17:40, 5:40 p.m. on, did I say HRT4? Globalna Hrvatska is the program. Otherwise, you can get a direct link and we can send that to you. So the next thing I want to tell you is last Saturday, I went on a day sail with three of my most favorite Croatian friends in the entire world. And it was so much fun. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this company that does a day sale, like they have not paid me at all. They've not compensated me for this. I merely want to shout them out because I think they are so wonderful. And I look forward to doing a day sale with them every single summer. I think it's a great experience because it's completely private. You're on a nice sailboat. You get a beautiful meal and appetizers and drinks and everything. And so you can really have this beautiful, concentrated sailing experience being on a boat with like your friends or your family or whoever's important to you. And you're not with anybody else. They're not dumping you off on an island to do sightseeing for 4 hours. Like it's none of that. It's just on a boat and the sea. And it's just so, so glorious. So they're called Sunburst Sailing, and it's run by this lovely couple, John and Lynn. They're from Scotland, and they've been, I don't know how many years they've been doing this in Croatia, but a lot of years. And I think it's been at least 4 summers now that I've done this with them. So I really loved it. We went into a bay on Chiovo, which I hadn't done that before, and then we went over to Brač. I see we have a question, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into that before I can move on. I have a question. Is sick leave paid for in Croatia? Yes, it is. Sick leave is paid for in Croatia. So, one, I want to make sure that I mention that if you are working for a Croatian employer, then your benefits like health insurance, pension, and your taxes are all the responsibility of your employer. So you don't ever see that. That is completely paid for by your employer. And then if you are sick, you are supposed to provide like a sick note. I wouldn't say that many employers actually force you, but if you are going to be out for an extended period of time, then you are going to have to provide that sick note. And there is a certain point where sick leave triggers like a lower salary if you have like an extended leave. I don't know off the top of my head when that trigger goes into place. But yeah, sick leave is always paid. I mean, I can only speak for our team, but we've never had anybody on extended sick leave. But we have a small team of 10, and we all have a very high degree of trust. So I know that if someone's sick, they're sick. I don't need to force them to go and get a doctor's note. That just doesn't seem like the nice thing to do. But most companies are not like us. They're not little close knit people. Especially if you're a seasonal business and you have different employees every year and you don't have that kind of relationship with them. That's a little bit different. So thank you for asking that question. It's a great one. Okay, what else? Oh yeah, I also want to tell you I was on Sholta. I've just been all over the place. It's just been nuts. So I was on Sholta for 2 nights, 3 days. I was staying at this glamping site that our colleague Tamara has. She inherited this land from her grandparents that has this olive orchard, and these trees are 160 years old. And in between the olive trees, they have this dry stone walling. I don't know if you're familiar with this. If you've been in Croatia, like anywhere in the southern part of Croatia, Dalmatia, then you've seen them without knowing that you've seen them. That there's this culture of dry stone wall technique, which essentially means that you're building walls out of stone without any kind of mortar or something gluing it together. So they're really strategic in how they place those rocks depending on the shape so that they can form a very strong wall. And I mean, you have walls that have been here for not just decades, but more than 100 years, and they're still standing. And I think she said that those had been built around the time that they formed started growing the olive trees, which was pretty cool. So it's almost like these little stone highway, like roads in between each of the trees. It was so beautiful. And there was nothing out there. It was like our tent next door, and just nothing else. It was so quiet. It was so beautiful. And we didn't go to the beach like at all. We only left the campsite one time to go and watch the sunset at this place that Tamara mentioned that was way at the end of the road. She was like, just drive until the road ends, and then that's where you can watch the sunset. And so Sholta is like very, very, very rocky, like really craggy, volcanic rock just cropping out of the sea. So we kind of scaled down on these really craggy rocks that were like at this point to find this place to watch the sunset. And it was so gorgeous to watch it kind of fall down into the sea. It's a little bit hard to see the sun set into the sea from Split during summer. Usually it kind of comes back down behind the mountains, but from there we could see it that way. So if you get a chance. And she also told me about this movie that was filmed there called Far Away. I can't say the reviews have been great, but it's basically a trailer for Sholta, and they built this little house on that same road as where the campsite is all the way at the end. And I think the premise is this woman, her uncle dies, and she inherits this house, and so she goes out and she lives on Sholta. And so yeah, check it out if you want to see a trailer for Sholta. I mean, there's another one called Weekend Away that was set in Split. Also not a super great movie, but it is a really nice trailer for Split. It's beautiful to watch. Okay, what else do I have to tell you? Oh, yeah, I have one more thing to tell you, and then we're going to dig into it. So, Monday is a holiday here in Croatia. It is Victory and Homeland Thanksgiving Day and Day of Croatian Defenders. I will say this for your entertainment in Croatian. It's a bit of a mouthful. All right? Uh, Dan Pobjede I Domovinske zahvalnosti I Dan Hrvatskih branitelja. Okay? So we are closed because we have to be closed because it's a national holiday. So this commemorates the military action called Oluja, which is Operation Storm, if you want to translate it into English, from Domovinski Rat, so the Homeland War. It was the last major battle in 1995. So the Croatian army liberated the city of Knin, which is in Dalmatia, that was occupied by the Serbian army. So after this battle was won, then it signified the end of the Republic of Serbia and Krajina photo state. So this is the battle that ended the Homeland War, essentially. So it's a very significant day. We do have a post that goes into this in more detail. So if you would like that, send us a DM. Otherwise, on Monday, I know we will be sharing it as well. Okay. So let's dig into the questions, shall we? All right, the first one comes from Elise here on Instagram. I just realized that hands, arms, and feet, legs share respectively the same Croatian word. Why wouldn't they name each individual body part like in English or Spanish? Okay. So, Croatian does have words, individual words for the different parts of an arm. However, in everyday conversation, the entire arm, including hands and palms, is often called ruke, even though people know the names of each body part. That has been my experience as well. See what the Croatian word is. So I'm going to tell you the singular, and I'm also going to tell you the plural. So arm is ruka, arms is ruke. Okay, and then hand is shaka, and then shaka is multiple hands. Palm is dlan, and then palms is dlanovi. And then two legs is noge. All right, and then ankles. This one's a little, is a glejan, and then the plural is a glezhnjevi. That one's a bit of a mouthful. And then feet is stopalo, and feet, multiple feet, is stopala. And last is toes. That's nojni prst. So we said that finger was pursed. So this is nojni prst, which is the way I would translate that is like leg fingers. And then the plural is nojni prsty. Okay. So we have a few things that we can give you if you would like. One is 10 ways to learn Croatian with very little effort. Basic Croatian words and phrases to get you through life. And then we also have online courses for learning the Croatian language, different places where you can learn it online, both free and paid. And we make recommendations within that guide for both the free and the paid options. Just to tell you now, free, we recommend Croaticum. That's through the University of Zagreb. It's free, it's online. And then paid, we recommend Croatian Language School. That's who I do my Croatian lessons from, and I think they're so if you would like any of those links, if you're on YouTube, you can find them down below in the description. If you are on Instagram, send us a DM. We'll shoot those over to you. Transmission keeps getting hung up. USA, New England. Is anyone else having any trouble? I know I'm kind of a little bit away from the Wi-Fi. Spotty here too, but just seems better now. USA, Texas. Oh, hey, Texas. Well, let me do something. Oh, no, I'm off the Wi-Fi now. So now I'm on my data. That's why. Let me see if I can do something here because I want to make sure you can hear me. Okay. Let me see if I can try this over here. How's this, guys? Is it better? Worse? This is doing stuff on the island, you know? All right. Let me think if there's something else I can do. I could go inside and I was hoping to be outside, but sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do for good signal, huh? It's tough out here on the islands. I haven't felt like I've had like really good signal anywhere, if I'm being honest. Um, okay, I'm officially indoors now. Okay, is it still paused? Tell me, where am I at? How are we doing? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Anyone know what's happening right now? Yes? No? Yes? No? Hmm. All right, I'm just going to keep talking and then we will find out what's going on. All right? So, next, is it still paused, guys? Someone joined, so I'm assuming not. Yes? Yes? Okay, good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So our next question comes from, well, first, thank you everybody for your patience while I moved locations. You know, this is just kind of part of being in Croatia on an island. The signal is not always going to be fantastic. And I really appreciate your patience with that. So now I'm indoors and it kind of looks like Croatia still. I've got the stone wall here. All right, cool. Thank you everybody for telling me that everything is okay. All right, I had to switch over to the wireless. All right, so our next question comes from Megan on the 5 Question Friday forum. I am British, submitting my year residence papers in August. What are the reasons they could reject me just to help settle my fears? You know, I'm surprised we haven't gotten this question, to be honest, because this feels really reasonable to wonder about, you know, I mean, well, okay, I'll rephrase that. I have gotten this question a few times on our consulting sessions, but in terms of the 5 Question Friday queue, this is the first time we have that. I'm going to play with Rosemary while we talk. Okay. So I spoke with our head lawyer because I had some ideas about what I thought, but I wanted to talk to someone who's actually dealing with MOP on like a regular basis to be able to get an idea of like all of the reasons that you could possibly be denied residence. Okay. So obviously lack of documents. There are certain documents they ask for. If you don't give them what they ask for, why are they going to approve your application for residence? Second is people leaving for months while they are in process. So you shouldn't do that. I know we've talked about that a number of times on Expat in Croatia. Like when you submit your application for residence, you shouldn't then go traveling and leaving for months at a time because MOP has to communicate with you. They have to do an accommodation check to make sure that you're actually at the place where you say you are. That's really important. So that is another reason, okay? If you submit an application for residence and you need to travel, like need to travel, like work, family emergency, a wedding, something like that, you have to notify MOP in advance. You need to tell them the dates that you're going to be gone so that they understand that you are coming back. Don't just leave, okay? Please notify them. It doesn't matter whether you're traveling within Schengen or if you're traveling outside of Schengen, please just notify them in advance because that kind of situation, it's not like just do it now and ask for forgiveness later. MOP doesn't work like that. Okay. So next would be the violation of the digital nomad other purposes switching. So I know that I have been talking about this a lot, but I'm guessing that not everybody knows what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to quickly explain that one. Okay. So that's the simplest way to go about this. All right, let me set the stage for you. In the law on foreigners, you have the part that governs digital nomads, and then you have the part that governs other purposes. Other purposes is like prepayment of rent, ownership of property, learning the Croatian language when you're not a student, okay? So under each of those types of residence, it says you have to wait 6 months in between applications. That doesn't mean you have to leave Croatia for 6 months. It means you have to wait 6 months to apply again, which does mean that you have to leave Croatia for at least 90 days. Usually 100 is the best one. Then you can come back as a tourist, and then once 6 months and 1 day has elapsed, you can apply again on that same basis. However, there's been a bit of a loophole in the law since the digital nomad permit came about, where you could go from digital nomad to other purposes to digital nomad to other purposes and just do that. Or you could be a digital nomad with a family reunified spouse and then switch places. So the digital nomad becomes a spouse, the spouse becomes the digital nomad, and then just go back and forth like that. And doing one of those two schemes has allowed people to stay in Croatia for multiple years without having to leave or wait 6 months in between. However, that has been abused and in a huge way, in the way that Croatia did not intend for it to be used. It's not in the spirit of the law, for sure. And also, another consequence of that is tax evasion and working without a permit to work. Because if you are on other purposes, you are not allowed to work for anybody. You cannot work for someone abroad. You cannot work for somebody in Croatia. You cannot work, period. However, that is what people have been doing. When they switched from digital nomad to other purposes, they didn't just quit their job. And also, before Croatia even got the digital nomad permit, people were using the other purposes to be digital nomads. So that is one problem. And the other problem is tax evasion. So if you are the digital nomad, you have a tax exemption on your working income. But if you are the spouse of a digital nomad, you do not have that. You also don't have the right to work either. Okay. So if you are a spouse and a digital nomad and you are switching places and you are working as the spouse, you're working without a permit, you also don't have the tax exemption. And that's really important to understand. Okay. And if you are on other purposes, you have no tax exemption at all, which means you are supposed to be reporting all of your worldwide income and potentially paying tax on it. So these are all the reasons why Croatia wants to shut this down. So in reality, well, practically speaking, they have already written a draft edit of the law to fix this loophole, to close it down, and they haven't passed it yet. We're expecting them to pass it this year, but they haven't done it yet. But that doesn't mean anything because they've already been implementing this since March. We've seen that already. We have seen lots of people who've gotten denied. We've seen a lot because they were trying to do this basis switch. We've also seen a lot of people who have tried to submit a new application on a new basis, and MOP says you can't do this. You have to wait 6 months. So essentially what they're doing in the new draft of the law is they're combining those two things and in the law into one place where it says, like, for digital nomad and other purposes, you have to wait 6 months. Whereas in the existing law, they were governed separately, and that's how the loophole problem occurred in the first place. So that is the second reason that you can be denied residence, okay, if you try and do that basis switching without waiting 6 months, okay? So next is not being active in the process. So MOP can make requests of you. So maybe there's a document they want from you that you haven't provided. Maybe there's a problem with a document that you've already provided and they need you to fix it. Or maybe they're doing an accommodation check and you're not there. They need you to participate in that process. If they have made a request of you and you have not given them what they've asked for, that's another reason that they can deny you, okay? Another is, okay, this was something I did not know. This is something the lawyer told me, so I'm really glad that I asked her. So we all know about how when you are applying for residence in Croatia, you have to provide a background check from your country of nationality or the country where you've been living for the last 12 months, okay? That is the criminal background check from that country. However, apparently, Croatia does their own, like, secret background check on you, some kind of higher level background check. I was not aware that they were doing this, but they are doing it. It kind of makes sense that they would do that. That's their prerogative. So, on one hand, you could be denied because of your background check because it has felonies on it or it has a crime on there that Croatia considers to be a felony, because not all countries in the world have a felony misdemeanor system. Some don't. I believe Australia is one of the countries that does not have that. So when you have a crime on your background check that in a country that does not have a felony misdemeanor system, you need a lawyer from that country to kind of explain that it would be considered a misdemeanor, because misdemeanors are usually okay on a background check in Croatia. Felonies are not. Felonies are deal breakers. So That is one level of background check. And then the second one is the one that Croatia does without telling you about it or disclosing it, I guess, the secret background check. So that can also be a criminal check that can surface stuff that would make them deny you residence. Okay. So the guide that we have is we have a guide on all the options for residence in Croatia, which is like a landing. What is the proper metaphor for that? Let's call it a terminal. It's an airport terminal where it has a list of all your destinations for residents. And then you can click on each one and zoom out to each of those other guides. I think that was a probably pretty poor analogy, but it's the one that comes to mind because we have a guide on every single basis for residents with one exception. The one exception is scientific work, because in 11 years that I've been doing this at Expat in Croatia, we have never once had any request for scientific work in Croatia, and that's why we've not done a post about it. Question, does it matter how old the felony is? No, it doesn't. We had a case with someone who had something from 1991 or 92, and they were holding up his residence because of it. So no, it doesn't matter how old it is. And in my experience, what the lawyers always recommend is try and get it off your record. This isn't just for residents now. I'm talking to citizenship people as well. If you qualify to apply for citizenship based on descent or for any reason, descent, marriage, naturalization, whatever, you have to provide a criminal background check from your country of nationality. Does not matter how long it's been since you've lived there. Okay? I submitted a background check from the USA and from Croatia, and they took my background check from Croatia and they threw it in the trash in front of me. This has no purpose. We don't need this. They only took the one from the US, even though I hadn't lived there. And at that time, I hadn't lived there in 9 years. But they still wanted a background check from the US. So if you have something on your background check, try and get it taken off. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether it's a misdemeanor or felony. Just try and clear it off your record. That is always the best course of action. It's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. Okay. If you would like that guide on all the options for residents, then we'll link you out to the individual guides for different bases for residents. Send us a DM if you're on Instagram. If you're on YouTube, then it is down in the description below. Okay, our next question is from an anonymous person on the 5 Question Friday forum. When buying property in Croatia as a recently granted Croatian citizen, can my wife be on the title as a non-citizen of Croatia? So whenever we're getting questions or people are telling us their stories, it is often that you have to zoom out from a situation because usually the person asking, they don't know what's relevant and what's not relevant, and it's our job to look at that information and be like, okay, this is relevant, this is relevant, this is relevant, but we also need to ask you questions about this, and this because we're missing these parts of the puzzle. So this is one of those situations. The fact that they're a newly granted Croatian citizen has absolutely nothing to do with the question of whether their wife, who is not a Croatian citizen, can be on a property as an owner. Irrelevant. Whether or not you can be on a property as an owner is based on your nationality. And in terms of Canada and the US, it is the last state or province where you lived, which yes, that is an exception that's super fun. So when you are a third country national, so you're a non-EU citizen, you're not a Croatian citizen, your ability to buy property in Croatia comes down to two things. One, the property you buy or you get added to in this case has to be zoned residential, period. It cannot be zoned anything else. It can only be zoned residential. Second, it's based on reciprocity. So your country of nationality, or in the US state or Canada province, has to have some kind of reciprocity agreement in Croatia. That means Croatian citizens can buy property there, citizens from there can buy property in Croatia. And those reciprocity agreements differ based on the country. So I'll give you an example. Australian citizens can only buy property in Croatia if they are permanent residents in Croatia. Okay? And in the States, I don't know off the top of my head which states cannot buy property in Croatia, but I'm a Texan and I was able to buy property in Croatia because Croatia and Texas have a reciprocity agreement in place. So I submitted my Texas driver's license, which I have kept current, as proof that Texas was the last place I lived. Okay? So if you're trying to buy properties American or Canadian, you need to have proof of where it was that you lived last. So that way they can apply some kind of reciprocity agreement to you. And that's why you have to go through this extra step with the Ministry of Justice. So if you're a third country national, you always have to get the purchase or being added to a property. It has to go through the Ministry of Justice first so that they can do the due diligence on the property and check the reciprocity agreements in place that pertain to your situation. So that took 2 months for me, for them to check the reciprocity agreements for me. Okay. So we do have a guide called 8 Things to Know About Buying Croatian Property, which has a list of all of the Croatian reciprocity agreements that are in place so that you can check that. If you're on YouTube, it's down in the description. If you are on Instagram, you can send us a message and we can send that over to you. We also have tons and tons and tons of real estate stuff. So if there's anything else that you would like procedure-wise, we've got it. Okay, this brings us to our lawyer tip of the week. Dun, da, da, da. I'm evolving my sound effects. Okay, so our lawyer tip of the week. If you are opening a business, most companies hire a third-party vendor on a monthly retainer to handle their bookkeeping, which does their tax filings and meets their financial obligations. What you may not know, it's also beneficial, especially for foreigners, to have external legal aid as well. The right law firm can watch out to make sure everything you are doing is legal, prepare contracts with employees, vendors, and partners that protect your interests, and give counsel on new ideas and goals to make sure they are in line with Croatia's numerous laws and regulations. It can be much more economical to hire a firm on retainer for your company rather than one consultation at a time, as procedures can quickly add up. Most importantly, it means that someone is watching your back holistically, 24/7, and not just by procedure. While litigation is not covered by retainers in Croatia, having a retainer can reduce the chances of litigation, as most issues can be prevented by proactive due diligence and mediation. I could not agree more. So I have been in a number of sticky situations because I was being cheap about it. Now, I'm not going to tell you what those sticky situations are because I need to keep some things private. And I'm not going to admit that on social media. But I will say that I have had multiple issues because I was like, I didn't want to spend the monthly retainer amount, and vet everything. And that was a very dumb decision. It was a very dumb decision. Now I do have a retainer. I have for a while now, because every employee contract, every partner contract, like you are supposed to have contracts for like friggin' everything. Okay. If you are having like regular invoices or payments in between Croatian entities, there needs to be a contract that you can tie those invoices to, for example. Also, there are things that I wanted to do in Croatia or things I tried to do in Croatia that I didn't realize were not legal, or at least they were in a gray area, because I'm not familiar with this system on the level that a lawyer is. And they're the ones who can be like, okay, well, either you can't do that, or let me suggest that you do it this other way and make sure that you put this documentation in place so that you have this paper trail before you, and that's how you prevent larger problems down the road. So if you seriously want to have a business in Croatia, it does not matter what kind, and I have said this before, I will say it again, you need to have a good lawyer and a good accountant, period. And to be honest, if you're an individual, you should also have a good accountant and a good lawyer. It doesn't mean that you need to pay them every month. If you're just an individual, that's not necessary. But you should have a tax advisor and a lawyer that you trust so that if something does go wrong or you have questions, you have someone that you go to. That way, you're not trying to scramble to find a professional when you're in the middle of some chaos, because chaos can just creep up on you, without any kind of warning. And you don't want to have to be going looking for a professional when you need one and it's time sensitive. We had someone who reached out recently and they had an emergency for a lawyer, and it was like midnight on a Friday, and they needed someone the next day. It's like, it doesn't happen that fast. It just doesn't. We can try and move mountains as best we can to help anybody in any kind of situation. But, this is why it's important to have somebody that is going to have your back for when you need it. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's still taken time to kind of sort out some of those issues. Thankfully, most of them are resolved now. Okay, next question comes from Laura on email. Are we able to buy and register a car using our American driver's licenses, or do we need to wait until we exchange our Croatian licenses to purchase and register a car? So yes, you can register a car with an American license or any foreign license for that matter. Honestly, they don't ask for it. They do not ask for it. It's not on the list of requirements to register a car. So they're not even going to look at it. I've registered my car now twice. Twice, yeah. I bought in 22 and I did 23 and I'm about to do 24. So the first two times I did it, they never asked for my driver's license. I had a Croatian one at that point, but no, they did not ask for that. You just need to make sure, and generally speaking, regardless of whether you're registering or not, your license needs to be valid if it's foreign. And in Croatia, your foreign driver's license is only valid for 1 year from entry, unless you are a European citizen. That is something else. It is valid until it expires. But if you have a third country driver's license, is only valid from 1 year from the point of entry. After that, even if it's valid in Texas or Nigeria or China or Australia for 10 years, it's only valid in Croatia for 1 year. Why is that important? If you get in an accident, your insurance is immediately invalidated because under Croatian laws, you do not have a valid driver's license. So that's really important. Okay, what is the income tax rate in Croatia? Okay, so it is 2030, I think, off the top of my head. We do have a guide on this. We have a guide called All the Taxes You Might Pay in Croatia, which we can get to you if you DM us. So if I'm trying to go back into my mental encyclopedia back here, it's 20% and 30%. And the 20% bracket is up to, all right, I'm still thinking in kuna, guys. So it's up to, I think, 36,000 kuna per month, which I think is just under 7,000 euros. That's the 20% tax rate. And then above that is 30% tax rate, I think. Please don't hold me to that. I know that's an approximation, but it should be in the ballpark of what it is. But there is a lot of other factors to consider. So I wouldn't just straight up say that, because there are different kinds of income. There's business income, there's passive income, there's inheritance tax. There's a lot of different ways that income is taxed in Croatia. So if you really want to know what you would be taxed on your income, speak with a tax advisor. That doesn't obligate you to anything, but they can do an evaluation of all of your income or the income that you are planning for to have, and they can tell you exactly what your liability or lack of liability might be. I think, unfortunately, we have too many situations where people just kind of ostrich and like put their head in the sand. They're like, oh, if I don't ask the question, then there's no liability. Or how is Croatia going to know about my foreign income? It's like, don't take that risk. Please don't evade taxes. Please, please, please don't. I don't recommend it, because when that hammer falls, it is a very expensive situation to get out of. Okay? Very, very. I've seen it happen. Usually the way that people get caught is because they buy a property or they buy an expensive car. Those are the two ways I've seen people get caught. Because if you are not listed as a taxpayer in Croatia, those contracts go to the tax office and via the public notary. And the tax office is like, wait a minute, this person is not a taxpayer in Croatia. Where did they get the money to buy this? Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have income outside Croatia and buy a property in Croatia and everything's fine. If you don't live here, you don't live in Croatia, if you're not a tax resident of Croatia, but you live in Germany full time and you're just buying a vikendica, a little, weekend house on the island, then it's not a big deal. But if you're a tax resident, if you're here more than 183 days and you are earning income, it doesn't matter whether it's in Croatia or abroad or whatever, Croatia, by law, you're supposed to be telling Croatia about it. The only exception to that is the digital nomad permit, where you have a tax exemption on your working income only, not your passive income, but your working income only, and only the digital nomad who has a permit for that, not their spouse, which we've already outlined in great detail earlier in this episode. Okay. All right. So what else do I want to tell you? Oh yeah, back to the how to register a car. We do have a guide on how to buy a car as well as register a car. If you are on YouTube, it's down in the description. If you are on Instagram, just send us a message. We'll get that over to you. Okay. So this is our last question, I believe. Yes, 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 yes. This comes from Jeff on the 5 Question Friday forum. Aw, it seems like the internet is still being a bit spotty. That's a bummer. Thanks for your patience, guys. Okay, so when looking at real estate listings, I often see the same property listed at 2 different prices, often significantly. Is it some type of bait and switch? Also, some say that price does not include VAT. I didn't think there was VAT on real estate. I'm so confused. All right, well, Jeff, I understand why you're confused totally. So first, let's go ahead and take care of VAT, and then we'll get into the other stuff. So no, there is no VAT on real estate unless you sell it within a certain amount of time, like if you're trying to flip a property or something. But generally speaking, there is no VAT on property. What there is VAT on is the real estate agency fee. So if you're using a real estate agency, they are charging you between 2 and 4%, depending on a variety of factors, and that they charge VAT on top of that. Okay, so that's important to, to understand. Now, regarding the difference in prices, I did consult with a property lawyer about this because I wanted to get a better understanding. I mean, look, I think that there's no way to say across the board that there isn't any bait and switching happening. I think that that probably does happen. But the most common reason is the one that she shared with me. So sometimes a property is sold through a real estate agency without an exclusivity clause, which means any real estate agency can then try and sell that property or make some agreement with the owner that is non-exclusive, okay? So in this case, the different agencies are all doing their own evaluations of the property and its value. And so that's how you might get, different prices for the exact same property on different sites. As far as like very wide ranging ones, why is there such a difference? But I'm not sure what the difference is. Jeff didn't share that in his initial message, what the difference in cost was for the example that he saw. But that can be an explanation for why there's a difference in prices, okay? Something else that the lawyer shared with me is if an agency is selling a property exclusively, then they will often reduce the percentage that they charge the seller to sell the property and then shift that reduction over to the buyer. Something to keep in mind. I do want to share you one experience from my own life here. This isn't in terms of buying and selling. This is as far as renting goes. So the last apartment I lived in, I was there for 7.5 years. Okay. And that property, I was in it for like 2 or 3 years, I think. And then a friend of mine was like, Sarah, your apartment's on Nushkalo for rent. And I'm like, what? So I contacted my landlord and I was like, hey, this listing is on there. And they said, oh, Sarah, we don't have anything to do with that. It's the agency that we used to, rent it out when you originally found it. And they're probably just using to bait people to contact them about that apartment. And then they'll be like, oh, it's already gone. And then they try and get them into some other apartment. That is something that does happen often. That's important to understand. Both for sales, real estate sales, as well as rentals. They will put some, amazing looking place up there, even though they know it's already sold, just to get people to contact them so that they can try them, sell them on something else. So also keep that in mind too. Okay. Because just because they say, oh, someone already rented it, doesn't mean it happened earlier that day or even last week. It could have been years ago, but they still have those assets. So if you see your apartment that you're in on Nushkalo, don't get freaked out. Just double check with your landlord that everything's fine, okay? Now, in terms of buying a property, I cannot hammer this home enough. Please use a lawyer. Please, 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 please. And if you are finding a property on your own and you see that there's a huge discrepancy in prices, that's a flag to raise with your lawyer. Say like, hey, could you check this out as well related to this property? Because, here they're saying it's 150 and over here they're saying it's 220. Like that's a pretty huge gap. Can you kind of help me figure out what that is? And is this something that's like a bit of a deal breaker? Is this a red flag, like a sign that something else is wrong? Okay. So if you ever want to speak to a lawyer about a property, we have obviously a network that we've mentioned quite a bit, a vetted network of 16 lawyers across the country, most of which do specialize in property as well as immigration and corporate law, family law, all that kind of stuff. So if you ever need a recommendation, just shoot us a message. If you're on YouTube, there's a link down in the description. We can always match you with the person who's best suited for your case. Okay. So that's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for your patience with the island connection. It's been a bit inconsistent, so it'll be interesting for me to do the rewatch to see how that goes. So I hope it wasn't too shifty and inconsistent for you, but I really appreciate you tuning in nonetheless. So what is in store now? So my buddy Jason and I are now going to go out for a lovely dinner on the Riva here in Kaprije and have some nice seafood. That's what you eat here is seafood. Oh, I didn't tell you this. Oh, okay, I gotta tell you this. So yesterday morning is the first morning that I was here. Now, Jason wasn't up yet, and I rolled down to Riva to go have coffee at that place called Bistro Lola, which is the cafe bar where they play the Croatian music, and they're going to have the tambarashi tomorrow night. And there were this group of people, like 15 people maybe, and they were all kind of I don't want to say huddled, that's not the right word, but they were all kind of sitting in the shade in one spot. And I'm like, what are they doing? Because it did feel like they were hanging out. You know how you see like, Babas and Ditas, like, men and women just kind of clustered places, just sitting there chatting and hanging out and socialize. It wasn't like that. Like you could tell that some people maybe knew each other, but like some people didn't know, weren't talking to anybody, and it just felt like they were all waiting for something, but I didn't know what. And they were there for more than an hour. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to go have an egg sandwich. So I was walking back up the hill. Jason came back down, took my place at the cafe. And he told me later, actually, I posted on stories yesterday. So I don't know if it's expired yet. It might have already expired. But Jason's handle is Taste of Jace. Jace is Jase. It's an account worth following. He posts lovely pictures and he talks about Slovenia. And I feel like there's a lot of overlap in culture and stuff, but it's a great account to follow. Anyways, he's got a picture up there that he took. Apparently, they were all waiting for the Ribarnica, which Ribarnica is like fish market, but in this case, the fish market is one lady. So what I didn't get to see was that eventually this one lady shows up with like a few crates of fresh fish and she sold it all in one gulp. And we were asking like about how we get fish, and our host, they said, well, there's fish that comes every day, but it's always pre-sold during summer. So you have to order in advance. Like it's a pretty intense thing. All the locals managed to pre-order all of the fish. So they were all waiting for the fish. And I thought that was just a pretty neat little island cultural thing to share with you. Okay, so we're doing that. We have one more day on the island tomorrow. We have a full day tomorrow. And then Sunday, we are going back to Šibenik. He's going back to Ljubljana. I'm going down to Split. Next Friday, I will be in Zadar. So I will be doing 5-question Friday from Zadar next week. So that'll be cool. I have no idea from where, but as you know, I go up to Zadar a few times a year. I have some really dear friends there, so I'm really looking forward to seeing them. And is there anything else to tell you? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're good now, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in again. Love this time that I have with you. I love keeping you company, and you're keeping me company too on these Friday afternoons. So I hope that you have a wonderfully sunny weekend, not too hot, stay cool, and vivimos. I will see you next Friday. Ciao.